Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Off the Clock Podcast, episode number 9. I'm Rick Gorman here with my partner, Scott Chandler. We've been off for a couple of weeks. Very busy schedule for both of us, I guess. So welcome back, Scott. What's going on?
Yeah, not too much. So I was on vacation for a couple of weeks. I went up to Bar Harbor. Bar Harbor was really nice. Had a great time up there. Did a little hiking. And have you been to Bar Harbor?
I have not been to Bar Harbor, no.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, some trails up there are awesome. I won't go into any detail, but they're great. Did a lot of swimming off the house, jumped off some rocks, which was, at this point in my life, is probably a little out of my comfort zone. Hard getting out of the rocks after I jump in.
You have a hard time getting out of a chair at the podcast. How'd you get out of the rocks?
And it wasn't easy, man. I watched the grandkids get out, and they just flew out of there. Then about a half an hour later, I'm getting up out of the rocks, so it wasn't easy. But that was a great trip. And also went to Vermont and spent a couple of nights in Vermont. And there was a place up there in Burlington called Shelburne Farms that sounds small.
I have been there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's in Burlington. We actually stayed in Waterbury right outside of Stowe. But we drove up to Burlington and we walked around Shelburne Farms, and it abuts kind of Lake Champlain. So it's really beautiful. It's a great walk. So that was a great time as well. So also a couple of new breweries up there. And again, I won't go into detail, but I have to mention one. It was called Freak Folk Beer Brewery was the name of it. And it's new, and the beer was unbelievable. They had one called Shrunken Head, and it was outstanding. And again, there's so many good breweries up there. Alchemist is up there. Lawson's is up there. So, and that might be a preview into the brewery review.
The brewery review, and obviously a couple of days of some healthy drinking up there, Scott.
Yep, very healthy. Yep. Had a good time. Always good. Yep.
All right. In my last 2 weeks, just been kind of enjoying this summer. A lot of good weather. Haven't had a ton of rain. Spent a lot of time. Actually spent 3 days up in Newburyport over the past couple of weeks. Just it's a destination point that I like, and I was checking it out, and a lot going on. Last Sunday they had their...
Did you stay overnight there?
No.
Okay.
It's a whopping 25 minutes from home, so no need to really stay there. But, they had their Yankee homecoming this past Sunday, which was pretty good. But for me, a couple of out of the comfort zone, which obviously I'm trying to explore a lot. So had a major interview for the Human Library at the Nevins Library, and I've been accepted as one of the 20 people that are going to be the Human Library. We're in, I guess, November. There's some hefty training that goes to this, speaking training, and then I'm going to kind of tell my story of nonprofit administration, some of the stuff we started, so that's exciting. And then probably the biggest thing out of the comfort zone, I'm a diehard Planet Fitness guy, but I have joined Orange Theory after some serious consideration and really looking for something which has a little bit more of intense training. I had just got my new primary care, spent a lot of time talking to me about strength training and different things with that. So I've joined Orange Theory, been there a couple of times. I did not embarrass myself in the first one. Got back there last night. I'm telling you, it's tough, and I'm struggling a bit. Not necessarily with the cardio portion, but actually the strength training. I actually thought I was a little stronger than I was. So there's a learning curve for there. I've signed up. I'm going to be one of those guys that 8 times a month. Could probably buy some extra classes, but going to try this out, and it is a workout, unlike any other workout that I've been going to. So very much out of my comfort zone. One of the older people doing it, starting out at my age, but I would really suggest it for people to look at something like this, especially around the whole that we're talking a lot about with weight training and strength training and stuff like that. So yeah, come out of the comfort zone with that. It's been pretty cool.
So is Planet Fitness in the rearview mirror, or are you still doing that?
Planet Fitness still every day, pretty much, that I'm not at Orange Theory. No, for my time being, it's right in my building. It's very cheap, and but a personal workout, and I know you'll fight me on this a little bit, that doing your workout is one thing, but I find that you got to be challenged a little bit more, and that's why Orange Theory interests me a lot more, because I think with your personal training, just yourself, you can decide whether you're going to go hard that day or not go hard that day. You don't have a choice with the Orange Theory. So I'm thinking a combination of both. I got to learn to take a day off occasionally. I'm going to try to see where that goes. And it could flip. I might be more of an Orange Theory person down the road if I end up loving it, and maybe a part-time Planet Fitness guy. But again, having the time as a retired guy, that having the time to do this is awesome, because I didn't have that before being retired.
Yeah. So, and talk briefly about the human library. So, what's your first subject going to be? What are you going to talk about?
So, I actually had given them 5 different areas I think I could talk about, like nonprofit administration, building a youth center, starting a basketball training program, the culture workshop. So what they're really interested in me is to kind of tell my whole story and talk a lot about, starting a nonprofit from scratch and building what we built. So I think that's what the focus is going to be, and I'll be touching place on stuff else. So, you never know. I might be talking in front of one person, or I could be talking, it's in the great room there. Maybe I'm talking in front of 30 people or whatever. So we'll see who signs up. Let's just hope at least one person signs up.
So how long of a presentation do you have to give?
It's a one-time presentation. I didn't know if this was an ongoing thing. And it's basically for whatever time you need. They looked at anywhere from like 45 minutes to an hour and a half, which is definitely time that I can fill in with that. So, yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to it, because it's a piece of what I used to do, obviously doing a lot of talking about what we've done. So, yeah, the human library. Also, in a weird way, a chance to give back to the community a little bit. I'm not getting paid for this. This isn't a consultant gig. This is more like, hey, I'm going to share my information for people that might be interested. I think they think that my clientele will be a lot of young people, all the way up to some older people that just want to kind of hear the story. So we'll see.
Sounds great.
All right, so that gets us caught up. We did want to touch base a little bit. We had a very intense business meeting at Panera. By the way, it was Scott's first time ever going in Panera. But we talked about where we're going with this podcast. We've gotten a lot of feedback, the good, the bad, the ugly. We talked about some recent feedback, which we at times both agreed on, then the other times that we basically had to agree to disagree on. And then we kind of looked at a direction that, in terms of this whole thing about, talking about retirement, we felt we needed to branch out a little bit from that, because in a lot of ways we're not an expert on some of the stuff that people need to hear, want to hear. So we've done a little bit of a rebranding. It's basically going to continue, but it'll be, 2 guys in their 60s that are retired talking about life. So we'll kind of talk more life things, but we will be still talking some retirement stuff. And we're actually going to try to, one of the things we talked about was to try to put people in the right direction that want to hear more about some things about retirement from people that are more experienced in that area too. And remember we talked about that. What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. So we had a long discussion about it, and I don't know, I think people, again, you and I can only talk so long about specific retirement things, and there are a ton of podcasts out there, right, that kind of support a lot of that information. So I think the two of us just talking about our day-to-day, what we go through, what we're doing, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And we'll see how it works out.
Yeah, and again, for those people that are looking for a lot of retirement stuff, we will weave this in. But one of the things we both tried to do is to kind of come up with some resources that we'll do in future podcasts. Scott did a lot around like financial stuff with podcasts, which I think a lot of people would find interesting. I found more interesting like the cultural stuff of what happens after. So I think what we'll do is to kind of point you in the direction, some books, some podcasts, or anything like that, as well as continuing to talk about our involvement into retirement, of which I'm at that whopping 5 months now. So, all right, so that's kind of a little bit of a rebranding. You will see a little bit of our promo stuff has a different look to it. Thanks to Goma, our artist, Goma has done some more work for us, so you'll see that too. So
is he related to Jim Neighbors?
He is not, but if you had to look and kind of hear him, he got that nickname because what we thought of Goma. I don't think Goma knew who Goma was when we named him that, but big shout out to Goma. He's been a big help for me and for our podcast. You know, I've given him some ideas, and he's put his AI creativity on stuff. So shout out Goma. All right, so what we're going to do first this week is we're going to talk about both of us. I would say we're both Ben readers. I would say you probably had found more time to read than I did over the years, but love to read, and we're doing a lot more reading now. The amount of books I've read just in the last 3 weeks is pretty interesting because, you know, never had the time to do all of that. So we're going to kind of give you, these wouldn't be like the best books, but these are kind of like the latest things we're reading, and kind of share it a little bit with us. And we'll go back and forth with this. So, Scotty, why don't you start us off with your first book that you've read recently?
Yeah, and again, this isn't in any particular order. They're just the last 3 books I read. And the first one I'm going to mention is called A Perfect Coincidence, and it's a book written by Jim Rosenberger, who's done some history books. He's done some other history books, but this is specific to Adams and Jefferson, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, and it's a great take. It's a great read. He tells some stories, and I've read a decent amount about both these guys, but he goes into depth about some stories about their relationship and how they got along, then they didn't get along. And then I think, and this shouldn't ruin the story for anybody, they both died in the same day on July 4th, 1826. So it's kind of an amazing story and extremely well written. I really enjoyed the book. Some history books can be dry. This was not that at all. So I highly suggest that book to anybody who's a history buff. If you're not a history buff, you're probably not going to enjoy it that much. But I thought it was well written, really good book.
So full nonfiction, not a historical fiction book.
Correct, okay. correct. And some amazing insights too. And it gets into, you know, subjects that are uncomfortable, like Thomas Jefferson, his view on slavery and the fact that he owned so many slaves, but and what happened to his slaves after he died, and it goes into a bunch of ethical stuff like that. So it's very interesting.
Wow, interesting. All right, I'll throw one out right now. It's interesting. I used to be nothing but a nonfiction reader, and for some reason recently I've become more of a fiction reader, so we'll see if that continues. But I read a book that I actually finished last week. A little bit of a hopeless romantic over the years, so I've read pretty much all of Nicholas Sparks' books. But he has a new book out called Remain, and he actually does it in conjunction with the supernatural movie guy M. Night Shyamalan, and they actually combined on this book because M. Night is actually turning this into a movie. And if you've ever seen any of his movies like Signs, in those type of movies, it's always an interesting take on different things. So this is actually a romantic book, but the themes of it have around emotional bonds that can cross between the living and the dead, because it's actually got a spirit thing to it, which was a little weird for me at first, but I really got into it. Talks about depression and loss, vulnerability, and it has a really good story with an interesting ending. And I've heard that the movie's going to have even a different ending. But if you are someone that likes some of our guys on this, but obviously more of our female listeners, it is a typical Nicholas Sparks book with a little bit more of a different type of twist on that. So Remain by Nicholas Sparks and M. Night Shyamalan. What's your second one?
Yeah, my second one is a book by Mitch Albom, who has written some sports books. And what was that book about, Maury? I think you had mentioned it.
Tuesdays with Maury.
Yeah, Tuesdays with Maury.
That was his first big one.
And that was a while ago. That was a while back. But this book was called Twice. And again, I'm not a supernatural guy at all. Like the book you just described, I'm probably not going to read that. This book called Twice is kind of on the edge of that. So and I think you read it, right? Did you read this?
I did. So I'm going to make a comment after you do your little review.
Yeah. So I enjoyed it, right? Because the concept was really cool. The concept was this: the main, and I'm not going to go too into depth in case people want to read it, but the main character, when something happened to him that he didn't like, or something happened that was destructive to somebody in his life, he could go back and kind of recreate that moment by saying the word twice and tapping his leg. Sounds weird, right? But as you get into the book, it's really fascinating. It's like you start thinking to yourself, okay, when in my life would I go back and do that? When would I hit my leg and say twice? Now, the drawback is once you go back, you don't forget anything, but you have to actually relive those years again. So in real years, this main character was probably extremely old, right? Because he had to relive everything in real time all over again. But it was very interesting.
Yeah, he was an older guy that was actually dying. But reality being, we talked to Panera, you gave me the book. I'm a Mitch Albom guy, so I actually did it on audiobook, which, by the way, for a lot of people have different opinions about reading a book and audiobook, and I'm actually on both sides of it right now. Sometimes, yeah. So it's actually Mitch Albom doing all of the characters on the audiobook. But I sent you a text the first night I got it. I said, wait, is this going to get any better? And you were like, yeah, it's a little bit of a slow start, but then it kind of goes. And I actually...
So one thing I said is you have to wrap your head around
the theme.
His capability.
His capability, right.
And it takes a while to do that,
right.
Because you're like, holy crap, what's he really doing here? Does this make any sense? But then as you get into the book and he actually gives examples of when he did that, you get the capability more, and then you can relate it to your own life, to yourself, or whatever. So I thought it was pretty interesting that way.
So I end up liking the book, as I don't think I text you back. I end up liking the book, although I thought, it was a little bit, I kind of knew what the next step was going to be. And I won't do any spoiler, but it is around what happens when you do the twice when it comes to love. So I think people will actually find that pretty interesting. I don't think it's Mitch Albom's best book, by the way, but I thought it was good. I mean, I would recommend it. And again, the first day I was like, I'm wasting my time with this. Glad I stuck with it. And actually, it moved pretty quick on that. So the name again is Twice by Mitch Albom. And I think both of us recommend that one.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Okay. All right, second one I'm going to talk about is as a reread I did. And there's a couple of reasons why I did. So one of the most famous American authors, Cormac McCarthy, wrote a book called The Road. There was a movie made out of it with Viggo Mortensen probably about 15 years ago. And it's, the theme is survival, morality, and father-son relationship. And I actually remember reading this when my son was really young. And if you have obviously an extremely close relationship with your child, which most people do, there's lots of things in this book that just really hit home to me. You're trying to protect your son. This is, basically after a nuclear holocaust and survival and things like that. But it's basically you're on your edge of your seat around like how are they going to survive, the characters that they come in touch with, and basically the father trying to prepare this kid for when he's going to probably have to live on his own. So it was a reread. My son is now, 32, and I kind of, for me, it really brought back when I first read it and the importance of father-son relationship. So it's not a new book. This is a book that's been out for decades. Cormac McCarthy is someone that I think some people love as an author and sometimes don't love as an author. So I would really recommend, if you've never read it, to read it. I don't think you need to reread it like I did, but check it out. The Road by Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah, so what year did the movie was?
So
it
the
a TV
movie
show?
was...
I read the book and I saw the movie.
Yeah, the book came out, I want to say the book came out maybe even like in the 90s.
Yeah,
I read it
sounds
probably in the early 2000s. And then I really, Michael and I both watched the movie, and I'm a big Viggo Mortensen guy. I mean, there's only like 5 characters in the whole movie. It's very dark. But, the theme that I kept going back to is this total connection between a father and a son. So, yeah, good book.
Yeah.
All right, give me a third one.
All right, my final book, which people might be glad it's a final book, is called Culpability. And that book is it's by Bruce Hostler, and it's about it kind of relates to AI, right? And the moral responsibility of the AI age. And again, I won't go into detail. I don't want to ruin the book for anybody, but something happens, and what happens is caused by an AI malfunction. And then it goes into the moral responsibility of the person who was in charge of kind of directing the AI, instructing the AI, and utilizing the AI, and what happens. There's a big lawsuit, and it becomes very interesting. There's a whole family dynamic behind it. I thought it was extremely well written, and that book moved fast. That's a very fast reading book, and I thought it was great. I thought it was a really good book.
Nice. Who's the author again?
Bruce Hoslonger.
Okay, great. I'll have to check that one out. All right, the third one, for the people that are closest to me, are not going to be surprised about this. This is a new book, still #1 on the New York Times bestseller list on paperback, another fiction book, and it's one that I've actually read twice and had on an audiobook once, and I've talked about it on this podcast, but I want to push it out because I actually think everybody in the world should read this book. Theo of Golden by Alan Levi. One of the craziest thing about Alan Levi, this is actually his first book. The guy was an attorney, a little bit of a country musician, and then he decided one day to be an author. He puts out this book that's just incredible. And, you know, the character of Theo is an interesting character. There's a lot of twists and things of why Theo is in Golden. Golden is actually based in Georgia, and it's around relationships, it's around intentional generosity, the transformation power of being truly seen, and basically redeeming grace and personal sadness. It's a book that keeps you on the edge of the seat the whole time. It's got I'm not, again, no spoiler, but it's kind of a sad ending, and but when you put it all together, it's, as I get to my age in this life, this is an extremely important book to me. It's an extremely important theme. It was given to me as a gift when I retired from two people that thought I had some characteristics of like Theo, and it's been a great book, so I don't think I'll read it again. I've read it 3 times in the last 5 months, but definitely check it out. You can get it obviously everywhere. It's in the libraries now. So Theo of Golden by Alan Levi.
Yeah, and I read that book at the recommendation of my wife, and I liked it. I didn't love it.
Yeah,
I thought it was extremely well written.
Why didn't you love it?
Yeah, and it's hard to pinpoint, right? I some of the characters seem unrealistic. It seemed like there were too many perfections in the book for me. I felt like it was unrealistic to a certain point.
Perfections or imperfections?
Well, a little bit of both, right?
Okay.
But just, and again, I don't want to give away the book, but we could, and this is where it'd be good to have a book club, right? Because you could sit down and you could discuss your views, my views, and that would be interesting.
Yeah, and I could see you liking it, not loving it, and anybody that knows me is going to say, oh no, he didn't like it, he loved it. And I think a little bit is where we both come from, and for me, on more of a professional level, stuff that I've done through my career, I can relate to some of this stuff a little bit more with impact and stuff. But again, I haven't heard anybody not like the book. I have heard a number of people who have more of an opinion like you. Hey, liked it, but it's not in my top 100 or whatever.
Extremely well written. It's amazing. And he wrote that book not even meaning to publish it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the amazing thing is, like, I look at it and saying, geez, I want to write a book. That gave me faith that maybe you can. This guy was not a writer. I mean, the books that we're talking about are people that have written many, many books. Alan Levi, I'm dying to see if he comes out with something else. His character in real life, I'm wondering if he'll ever even write another book or whatever. He might go and do something else. But, yeah, those are 6 books that I think that we've been reading. Again, may not be for everybody's taste, but let's talk a little bit about the importance of, well, I don't know if it's the importance or just the availability. Now that we're retired, why are you reading more?
Yeah,
I think I know why I'm reading more.
I'm really not reading more. I think I always read a lot, right? Even when I was working and had a lot going on. Before I go to bed every night, I have the light on, bugs my wife, but I'll always read. I'll have a book going to read before I go to bed. That's been the way I've been forever. So, but I enjoy reading. You definitely have more time to read. You can pick and choose what you read. Like when I started reading The Perfect Coincidence. And my wife had 2 library books that she checked in to her Kindle, and they had to be returned. So I put my Perfect Coincidence book down. I read the other 2 books quickly. And so I probably wouldn't have been able to do that had I not been retired. So definitely more time. And it's pretty good, So, but to your point about a book club, if you get the right people in it, that could be pretty good. It could be a good discussion if you get the right people in the book group.
And I'll put some pressure on you to finally get that going. We've talked about it probably.
Well, you can start one too,
Well, I'm doing a lot for this podcast. I'm asking you to start a book club. So we'll see if you follow through with that. I actually want to touch base on something I never did before, and I think you followed suit with this. Sounds like your wife was already ahead of the curve on this. But I used to always buy books, or someone would lend me a book or something like that. I have really taken this whole library thing to a different level. I checked out 4 books last week, and, I don't know if I'll read all 4 of them before they're due again. But I just think libraries are pretty amazing in terms of, just getting a book and not having to spend money and not have things cluttering up with more books in the house. So I think well, I don't know if you actually go to the library, but you kind of following suit a little bit with that, right?
Well, I do have a library card. So I mean, the perfect coincidence, my wife bought me, so that was from the bookstore. The other 2 were library books she had that were going to be returned from the Kindle. So and she gets them that way. But I have a library card. I probably haven't been to the library for 2 months.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and for me, even someone teased me about it, I don't really think I haven't been to a library since probably I was in middle school. So when I was in high school, I'd go to the library related to, school-related stuff. When I was in college and living in Boston, Suffolk University Library, but then the Boston Public Library, it was all more work-related stuff, school-related stuff. And then as an adult, my kids used to go to the library for books when they were young kids, but I probably never took advantage of a library. And now I'm there, the people actually know me there now. That's a little scary. So, but yeah, libraries are a good thing, and books and reading is a good thing. And I would say, we talked about having the time, but I also believe that at our age, reading and staying current with stuff, and just I think again, everything that goes with brain health, I think, is important too.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds correct.
All right. So those are our little bit of our reviews on some books. The next thing we wanted to get into is something that this was actually sent to us by one of our loyal listeners. And they basically said, I'd love to hear from you and Scott around albums. You like music a lot. And my take would be, can you tell us maybe, and we kind of limit it to 5 albums that we listen to probably a lot, religiously for some, through the years. And I think we're going to try to do this chronologically for both of us, that these albums had an impact on a certain part of our life. And for me, I'm starting with one in 1978, and I'm finishing up with one in 2026. And I think you're going to do a chronological too. So we're going to talk a little bit, obviously we'll mention the album, we'll mention the artist, and then kind of why it was important to us, and maybe tell our listeners a little bit more about us. So why don't you kick us off with your first album?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back way before 1978. So
well, you're older than me.
Yeah, but yeah, it's true. So when I was a kid, I used to visit my grandparents in Lynn, and a big night out for us was to go to Jolly George's, which was like a McDonald's type place.
Yeah.
McDonald's type place. Do you remember it?
I remember the name. Again, I'm younger than you, so I didn't actually go there, but I do remember the name.
Yeah, it was right off Route 1 there, and there was a Sears in the back, right? And they had albums. And my grandparents would every now and then let me go in and pick out an album. So I remember the first album that I ever really picked out was Meet the Beatles, which came out way before. I must have picked it out in 67, 68. It came out before that. But that had a huge influence on me. I remember listening in my bedroom to the Beatles, thinking I was cool. At that point, not really with friends, more with myself, and just kind of, I had a little phone, a little record player. And I would just listen to it and really kind of get lost in it. And that was really cool. Then I befriended somebody in my hometown, and he had an older brother. So I brought that record over, and his older brother had had some of the Beatles' older albums. And we would play those religiously. And I remember thinking we were cool in his bedroom, having a great time. So that was kind of my introduction into rock music, I think. That those were the first kind of albums. The Beatles were the first group that had a huge impact on me.
So you've always been a Beatles fan, more of a Beatles fan than I am. I'm probably more of a Paul McCartney fan. But anyways, why that album? I mean, the Beatles put out the first huge albums, but why did that album speak to you? Was it just an introduction to music?
Just an introduction. It was the first album I ever had like that. I think the second one I bought with my grandparents, and this isn't on my list, was 5-man electrical band Signs.
I remember
So
that. I remember this. A good song.
Yeah, and I think that was the second record I bought. But this first record is the one that had the most impact on me. There's no rhyme or reason to me choosing it, other than when I was 7 or 8, I knew the Beatles. Everybody was talking about the Beatles, so I said, "Oh, this would be cool." I think my parents didn't like the fact I picked out a Beatles record. At that point, they were like, "You're gonna listen to this stuff?" But it was what it was.
Do you ever, throw it on Alexa, that album?
No, I never do.
You
no,
don't. So you don't
no.
go back to it.
I don't.
Interesting.
I don't go back to it at
Interesting.
all. That's a great question. No, I don't.
All right, I'm going to start off with my first one a little bit later. 1978. I think everybody knows I'm a Springsteen fan. I've seen him 33 times. But this album, Darkness on the Edge of Town, which some people would not say is his best album, I think it's by far his best album because of how it spoke to me. So 1978, I'm 16 years old or whatever, and struggling with like adolescence. And I've talked a little bit about I had a father that was ill during most of my adolescence, and then obviously passing right when I graduated high school. But this album, which was based on his own angst around fighting with record companies or whatever, and it's kind of a dark / hopeful album. I used to listen to this album on a loop every single day. Again, you and I, we're talking albums. We're not talking streaming music like kids do today. But this album, and every single song on this album unbelievably spoke to me. And it really got me through some really dark times. The reason I asked you the last question on that is, this is an album that if I'm ever feeling a little bit in that dark stage, I will go back and listen to that. And I almost see the 16-year-old Rick listening to that all again. So 1978, my first album that I was just relentlessly listening to.
Yeah, so I'll go back to my teenage years as well, and I'll say in the early 1970s, not early, but early high school for me, which was 75, 76, a friend of mine was into The Who, and we put on The Who's next album, and I loved that album, and we would play that album over and over and over again. And as we got older through high school, that would be a common album for us when we were at parties, when we were before games, warming up before games, or getting psyched before games. And either Neil Young or The Who would be my kind of go-to. So.
Yeah, and Who's Next is considered one of the top 100 albums of all time. Phenomenal album. Was that your number 2?
That was my number 2.
Okay,
yeah.
So Who's Next by The Who. My first concert was The Who. So, yeah, I mean, I think that album is phenomenal. They got some really, The Song Is Over, Behind Blue Eyes, some songs that aren't on the radio all the time. But, yeah, great. The second one I'm going to pick, and I'm staying with my chronological time frame, 1981. This is an album that would be not on anybody's top 500. A lot of people might not even know it. Had a major crush on Stevie Nicks back then. And Stevie Nicks had just kind of branched out to a solo career from Fleetwood Mac, and she put an album out called The Wild Heart. And I used to, 1981, I'm in college, again, struggling like, who am I? My father had died, trying to figure out what my next life is going to be, so to speak. And this was a song that really kind of talked about a lot of emotional stuff. The song on it, Nightbird, is a song that I probably have listened to 5,000 times. But it was an album that, was rock to a certain degree, but it was also mellow to a certain degree. It just made me think a lot. And obviously, loving Stevie Nicks back then, and I still love anything that Stevie Nicks puts out. And Jesus, I think she's close to 80 years old now. But the album for me was a very powerful album during a period of time that I really kind of needed to really think about a lot of things. So, The Wild Heart by Stevie Nicks. All right, what do you got for number 3?
Yeah, my number 3, I know everybody's anxiously waiting this to reveal this, was Supertramp, right? I had a friend my senior year in high school who said, you have to listen to this new band. And I said, what are they? And he was all excited about them. And somehow he got an early release, or somehow he got some music by Supertramp before the record came out. And I'm listening to it, I'm going, this is unbelievable. This is like a sound I've never heard before. And to me, that was a great album. And that was an album we would sit down, we would have a couple of beers, do whatever, and just kind of reflect and talk about life. And we would constantly be playing that album. And great album. I felt like Supertramp, when Breakfast in America came out, and I still consider that album new, sadly, I thought they sold out a little bit. That first album is so good. Just everything about it, the songs. And I think Breakfast in America.
But it's Breakfast for America that really put them on blast.
And even in the quietest moments, to me, is not the talent level, and that's insane. I thought it was so good.
I can still remember those two album covers for Supertramp, by the way, as an avid record collector. Listen to that. Good choice. Yeah. All right, number 3 for me, I'm going to move it up to 1991, 1992. It was a period of time that I had just gotten married, had my first child, and this was an album that spoke to me. And again, I had this on a loop for probably a couple years, and Achung Baby by U2. Obviously, I am a huge U2 fan. I think this album is arguably, I think they have great albums, but I would put this up as arguably their best album. I know people will challenge me on that. But a lot of the individual cuts on this album really spoke to me around what I was feeling during that age of being newly married, new kids. You're trying to build your career. You're young, but yet time is flying by. And I think Bono's vocals and Edge's playing just really kind of spoke to me. And again, it's one of those albums that I don't go back to like A Darkness on the Edge of Town much, but I do whenever I hear an individual cut from that. I will actually think back to 1991, 1992. So that's my number 3.
Did you ever see U2 in concert?
You know what? Everyone asks me that because I'm a big fan. It is one band that I have not actually seen and would like to see. They obviously are still touring. I think they still sound really good. I'll download videos of their tours, the last few tours or whatever, but have not seen them live, which I think surprises people with how much I like them.
And I actually saw them twice.
Nice. All right. What do you got for your number 4?
Number 4 is a Neil Young album. So in early college, Comes a Time came out, I think, in 78. And when I was in college, I had a girlfriend that was really into Neil Young. So she kind of introduced me to it. And we would listen to a lot of Neil Young albums, but Comes a Time we would have on all the time, no pun intended. And to me, it was just a really good album for me at the time, right? It's thought-provoking. It's the songs are mellow but yet intense, and that's when I started to really love Neil Young. Great album.
Yeah.
And that album I will listen to a lot. Like if I'm thinking about something or want to reflect on something, I'll throw on Comes a Time quite a bit.
Well, we're both Neil Young fans, and I will put you as a bigger Neil Young fan than me. Although the last concert we get, I had to tell you a couple of songs were, so I think maybe that could be just age coming in.
I'm with the genius. So.
But I have a Neil Young, this won't be my number 4, but I just want to throw it out. I have a Neil Young album that speaks to me like Comes a Time that speaks to you. What is it?
I don't know. Please reveal.
After the Gold Rush. It's another album that I listen to a ton. Each one of those songs speaks to me. Probably in a lot of ways should be in my top 5. But again, it's something that when we go see Neil Young, I'm always hoping he's playing a couple of cuts from After the Gold Rush.
Yeah, it's Harvest, it's Harvest Moon, it's After the Gold Rush. Those a lot of big ones.
All right, my number 4, we're going to fast forward to 2020, and this album is an album that got me through really tough times. So 2020, I am separated and obviously heading towards a divorce, and then we get hit with the pandemic, and my whole professional life is put on, running programs during a pandemic and all the risks that went with that. But this was an album, again, another album from an artist that people wouldn't have as their top one. But for me, it literally got me through some dark times in the years 2020 and 2021. And that is the album 2020 by Bon Jovi. And John's voice is starting to go in this album. You can actually hear it to a certain degree, but he wrote a lot about what he was feeling during the pandemic, as well as his love for his wife that he's been with forever. But it was definitely an album that each cut a lot of political flavor to it, a lot of things like what are we doing in this world, how are we all gonna stand by each other, whatever. But it was all stuff that I was feeling in 2020, 2021. So if you haven't checked it out, by the way, John has had vocal surgery. He's touring right now. I know somebody, Shel Romando, just went and saw him and said he sounded great at MSG. So yeah, check it out, 2020 Bon Jovi. It's one of those ones you kind of put the lights down, hang out, and you kind of listen to it. So that's my number 4.
Didn't he just have to leave the stage?
So it happened I think Saturday night. He actually called it. He said, we're going to make this up. I got to apologize. So my fear for him is it might have something to do with that throat surgery, that voice, whatever surgery he had that affected his voice. Maybe he was just sick, and maybe that's just what it is. But yeah, again, I mean, he's a guy, he's our age, so you never know. Maybe this is kind of the end for him. But I love John Bon Jovi for what he stands for, and some of the stuff he does with the homeless and food security and things like that. So I got to help but root for him. All right, give me your 5th.
All right, my final and last album, thank God, I guess, is Live at Massey Hall by Neil Young, and that just spans like 3 decades for me. So I love that album, right? And again, it spans first time he sang Old Man, a lot of introductions to songs that became famous, just a great live album, and that is the album I will listen to the most from Neil Young, and that's kind of my go-to, and it always resonates with me, always will.
And I can confirm this because if I'm ever in a house and we sit in what I would call the Scott Chandler Great Room, he has Alexa and he starts screaming, "Alexa, play Live at Massey Hall." And I've probably heard him say that no less than 20 times. So I can attest that that's probably one of his favorite albums. And it's a great album. If you like Neil Young, it is a great album. So, all right, I'm going to finish with the last one. It's someone that I've tried to get Scott to listen to, and he just won't put the time in on it. But most people right now, he's probably the hottest songwriter in particular. And so for me, it flash forwards to now, and I look at this as my retirement album that has spoken to me the most in 2026, and that's The Great Divide by Noah Kahan. Just sold out 4 nights at Fenway Park. The album is phenomenal in terms of songwriting. I don't care whether you like the style that he sings at, but you really need to understand his lyrics. And for me, as I'm navigating this new part of my life, and a lot of reflecting. And I know it's not just me. So if you looked at the Noah Kahan concert, mostly 30s and 40-year-old people, some 20s, we got some young people there, and then there were some older people. But there was a guy, and he was exactly my age, and he's a therapist in Colorado, and he grew up in Vermont and then left as a teenager. But he basically was emotionally talking about how this album is therapy for a lot of people. And for him, he was saying that he wished that The Great Divide and Noah Kahan had come out when he was a teenager that was really struggling with stuff. And I've interviewed a lot of kids about why they love Noah Kahan, and a lot of it is that the lyrics speak to them and with things that they're dealing with. And, this T-shirt's like, Noah Kahan instead of therapy or something like that. So it's a great album. I actually wish you would listen to the whole album and the lyrics.
Yeah. Actually, my friend's wife went with her daughter-in-law and her daughter went to see Noah Kahan at Fenway Park and loved it.
And how old was she?
My friend's wife.
Yeah.
She's 60.
Yeah, so our age. Yeah.
But her daughter is late early 40s, and the daughter-in-law is about the same age. So.
Right. And I actually did a little bit of a training around with some kids, and actually used some of Noah Kahan's lyrics as part of my training. So a great album. So we've spanned 5 albums each over pretty much our life, correct?
That is correct.
Although you kind of leveled out with Neil Young with your 4 and 5, but is there anything new that's come out? Like, I'm trying to look at your thing. You don't have anything that's come out probably after 1984. So do you have any albums that spoke to you after the fact of artists that, or even artists, not even the album?
Yeah, and I think I've talked about him before, but Ween is definitely up there. And again, my son introduced me to Ween. And I think they're a great band. I think they're musically underrated. The Mollusk, I think, was an album that they put out that I really liked. I'm trying to think. There's another band that just recently canceled. I can't remember their name. That I like, but I can't think of their name. So you put me on the spot. I can't come up with that.
Yeah, and
I can't come up with the goods.
I'm still trying to encourage you. Our guy Head from the Wildcat Run, he tried to turn you on to Blue October. Do you remember that?
I do.
And I think you listened to one song, but yeah, interesting. And it's interesting because I think about Head and how that band. He would actually tell me how that band was important, how it spoke to him. So everybody's got their different interests with that. One thing before we wrap this up is, so were you much of an album collector?
Yeah, I mean, I had a decent amount of albums.
So give me a number for decent, because this is where I'm going with this story.
I mean, it wasn't hundreds, but I probably had 40 albums.
Okay.
In the 40 range. Yep.
So I had a collection, started obviously when I was really young. So I had a collection of about 500 albums. And they, in our house, we didn't have a lot of storage, so we had a really nice basement area. So I would have them, in these containers so they wouldn't get weathered or anything like that. And my ex-wife was always trying to be like, if you're not going to listen to them, get rid of them or whatever. I made a huge mistake. We had a yard sale, I don't know, back like 2010 or whatever. And I said, you know what? Records probably aren't going to totally come back. I had, obviously, at that point, CDs. I'd already gotten rid of 8-track tapes. Do you remember 8-track tapes?
I do.
Cassettes. So I end up in the yard sale selling my album collection, and it makes me cry thinking about how little money I got. And I had great albums. I had bootleg albums and stuff like that. So somebody out there is listening, and then all of a sudden, turntables start making a comeback, and I'm sitting there just still kicking myself, saying not just what I thought the collection was worth, but the fact that I would love to. There's nothing like listening to an album. Do you agree with that?
I do.
Yeah. So, yeah, kind of miss my album collection.
So how much do you think you lost out on? Because albums don't go for a ton unless they're in great condition.
No, if you
right?
go to, and I like to go to a lot of retro stores and stuff, you can get an album for like $2 or something like that. But I had specifically some of my Springsteen bootleg albums. I had a Who bootleg album. That stuff would have been worth, a few $100s because they were limited, editions of that type of stuff. So when I think of the total money, I don't know, but it would be nice still to have that money. I don't really want the money. I actually want the albums back. That's actually what I want.
I think my biggest regret like that is baseball cards. I had the full set of 67, 68, and 69 baseball cards that I sold. So you have Mickey Mantles in there, you have Koufax, you have all these great players, and it was the dumbest thing I ever did in my life.
So how much did you sell them for?
I took them to a ton of collectors, right? And it was a ton. We just bought the house, and I said, you know what? These are just sitting around. Nobody's going to want these. And I went to like 4 or 5 different collectors, and I think I got like $600 for them. I think now, and again, the market is not realistic, right? You look at a Beckett's price guide, it's not really reflective of the real price you can get, but it would be, if you price it out, it's thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with your Sports Illustrated covers that you have all over the man cave?
I have Sports Illustrated. I have like 7 years of Sports Illustrated. It's uninterrupted. I've given a lot away to people who are fans of different towns. Like my brother-in-law is a big New York fan, so I gave him a bunch of New York stuff. But I still have a ton. They're not very valuable.
Yeah.
They go up a little bit each year in price, but like I think the Secretariat one in 1973 is the most valuable one. I gave that to my friend's son, who is a big horse racing person.
So as we age, you got some of these things that were important to you that could be worth something. Think twice before you get rid of them. So, all right. So that was good on our, I think hopefully that, affected a few people with some of the reasons why we like those albums. Let's turn over to, you went to Vermont. You gave us a little teaser when we started off. The brewery review this week. Take it away.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Vermont's insane for breweries too, right? So for people who are into that type of stuff, they have Alchemist. There are so many places up there. But I ended up going to a brewery maybe 20 miles outside of Stowe in Warren, Vermont. It's called, most people have probably heard of this. It's not called Lawson's Brewery. For some reason they call it Lawson's Finest Liquids. And they focus on IPAs. They have a cup. I think they have one Kolsch, but really focus on IPAs. I had what they called the Easy Sunshine IPA. I think that was only 4.5%. That was really good for a session beer. It was really good. I don't love their beer, to be honest. The place itself and Sip of Sunshine is their big one, and it's okay, but I don't love it. But the place itself was beautiful. And really, really nice building. It looked like an old ski lodge, kind of. Sit outside in the patio, look at the mountains. So really nice spot. The food was great. And one thing they pride themselves up there on with the food is everything's natural, right? So I think I got a grilled cheese, and instead of fries, you get salad, like lettuce with dressing on it. I'm like, I'd rather have the fries, but it's more healthy.
Have you ever had a salad?
I have, and now I've had two because I had one up there. Yeah, the dressing was great. The dressing was some honey thing. I don't know what it was, but the friend I was with didn't even touch the salad. He just looked at it and goes, "This sucks." So
really,
yep. But really good brewery, nice spot. Don't love their beer, especially for up there, but still solid.
And I, a little plug for the Stowe, Burlington area. Vermont's great. Vermont's great all seasons too. And if you haven't been up there, you should actually take it in. It's a fun place. It's a happening place. And my story, it's actually when I saw a not well-known Noah Kahn back in the day. So
this time of year is actually considered not their tourist time, which is amazing because they're huge in the winter, they're huge in the fall.
The fall is huge up there. And the winter with the skiing and stuff is really big. So.
I mean, and that Shelburne, that was unbelievable. That farm, calling it a farm is ridiculous because I think it's 5 miles circumference, but it was beautiful.
Huge.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that also. So, all right, so that's the brewery review. Let's just finish up with the last few things. What else is on your mind going forward? I mean, in terms of a slight rebrand.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how people react to this and see if and see what we think of it and take it from there.
Yeah. So I want to obviously thank Cam. I think we got finished with all of the technical difficulties that we had last one. Sorry about that, by the way. Cam did a really good job of fixing that up, so we should be good going forward. We are not putting a schedule on this. What's your travel schedule next?
Yeah, actually heading down to South Carolina, I think on next Wednesday, a week from, what's today, Tuesday? A week from tomorrow. Tuesday. Yeah, so a week from tomorrow, heading down to South Carolina. Then the week after that, we go up to Portland for a week.
So we'll find some time. I'm away next week.
Where are you going?
I will be up at in Maine. And I'll be there on and off, so I'll have some time to actually, around your schedule, we can put the podcast together or whatever with that. Really interested in people continuing to give us the ideas, like these ideas came tonight from some of our listeners. Is there other things you want to touch base with? And we are going to try to do it. I'm going to start off with probably Scott the next time. He turned me on to a lot of podcasts around retirement. I think what we're going to do is just going to mention them for people to do their own research with it because we do want to keep the flavor a little bit of retirement. But as he said early on, I think not everybody wants to hear our voice on this. So fill us in on that. And I want to, once again, we appreciate you guys listening. Follow us on all the platforms. YouTube, Spotify, and Apple are our big ones on that. So any final word there, Scott?
No, I think we're good.
All right. I'm Rick Gorman. He's Scott Chandler, and we are off the clock.
Thanks, guys.